I'm going to start off with Rebecca Watson from Plusvital. Then we're going to be followed with an interview with Dr. Niamh Lewis. To get proceedings underway, as I mentioned, I'm first joined by Rebecca Watson, the CTO in Plusvital. Rebecca, since last year's event, Rebecca will be a new face to the Plusvital team and anyone who was here last year. She's joined the Plusvital team in that past year. But she won't be a new face to many of you in the industry. She's had a number of different roles. You've been an equine nutritionist, you've been a guest lecturer in UCD, you're a registered veterinary nurse as well, and now the Chief Technical Officer, as I mentioned, with Plusvital. So what we thought, for those who weren't in attendance last year, if Rebecca wouldn't mind just taking a minute, maybe a brief introduction to Plusvital, and there have been some changes, some structural changes since we were last here, and then we might just touch on a few areas where I think Plusvital can be helpful to breeders at this time of the year.
Yeah, thank you very much, Michael. It's a pleasure for us to be here and for us to be associated with an esteemed talk such as this evening. So thank you for having us. Yeah, as you said, I came to Plusvital in March of this year after a long history of working in the equine industry here in Ireland. In Plusvital, many of you will know Plusvital from the genetic side of the business, which has split a little bit now from the supplement side of the business, and we're now two separate entities. My role in Plusvital as CTO is on the supplement side of the business, looking at things like new product development, helping with our sales team on the ground in various countries across the world, not just here in Ireland, and also helping our customers, the end users who are choosing our products, helping them to advise them on which products are best for their needs.
Perfect. And what we were discussing earlier, what I'd like to just go through is many of us in the room have just finished up busy breeding seasons and trying to get mares in foal, and sometimes it can be a very frustrating process going through the breeding season. But what I'd like to do in terms of Plusvital's current offering, if we could touch on three kind of timely points or areas. So I'd like to know, in terms of Plusvital's current offering, where can the Plusvital offering be of most use to us as sport horse breeders in terms of breeding season, the inevitable foal sales that we're about to approach, and then either slightly before or after, depending on when your foals are born, the weaning process, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. We have a range of products that are available, but yes, thinking about the breeding season in particular, I know that this year, talking to breeders, it's been quite a challenging one. What with the terrible weather we've been having, getting mares to cycle has been very frustrating. But looking at things like, from a nutrition point of view, we want to make sure that we're providing the regular daily amounts of vitamins and minerals. We also have products there that can help with things like semen quality, especially for stallions that are maybe being collected for chilled or frozen semen. We want to optimize the semen itself, that when you come to defrost and inseminate your mares, that you've got the best and the most viable semen going into the mares, and you're going to have much more likelihood of getting a successful pregnancy. So yeah, there's certainly products there to support both the stallions and the mares during the breeding season. Coming into your foal sales then, again, addressing issues of the foals meeting their nutritional requirements can be difficult, particularly with some sport horse breeders where you're worried about growth rates of foals, and maybe there's adjustments having to be made to calorie intake to try and control growth rates so you're not getting developmental orthopedic disorders. But during those times when you're having to control calorie intake, the vitamin and mineral requirements are especially critical at that time, because even if you have to watch the energy going into the animal, we still need to make sure we're providing the building blocks so you're going to be able to build the best possible young horse going forward. And yeah, finally, weaning was the last thing that you asked me about there. a very stressful time for the young foal, and you often get a drop-off in growth rates then because they're coming away from the mare, they're stopped nursing, there's a lot of challenges. It's stressful for them being separated from their mother. So we want to be able to support the foal, and during stressful situations, things like you can get digestive upsets, you can also get really quite challenges to the immune system during those stressful times as well. So yeah, there's lots of supplements that are out there to support the horses and get them through there. And on the other side of this, as healthy as possible, because essentially that's what we want to do. We want to try and eliminate as much risk of things going wrong and keeping the horse as healthy as possible, cutting down, on other costs when you run into problems then.
Thank you very much. And in terms of the foal health, you mentioned something earlier, and sometimes it's nearly the more you hear or the more you learn, the more you realize it's actually like there's so many things that obviously go into us breeding or creating or raising our future superstars. But then you hit me with a new one when we were talking earlier about the new study that's out around foals' microbiome, and how that is linked to
future
their
success.
future success.
Uh-huh.
Would you mind just, for anyone that didn't see this, would you mind just touching on that a bit and
Sure.
what that entails and what we can do?
Yeah, no, this is something that I'm quite passionate about, gut health, because the gut has such an influence on many other aspects and overall horse health. Yeah, this was a study, it was just published very recently in the last few weeks there, and it was actually done on thoroughbreds, but it's very transferable to any breed of horse. And what they looked at, they did the study over a period of years, and they followed the foals that they'd studied. They looked at the microbiome of the foal and then went on to follow that foal throughout its athletic career. And what they've identified there is a strong correlation between the microbiome or the bugs in the horse's gut and certain problems that they run into. Respiratory disease is the first one that they've identified, and everyone knows who has a horse that every kind of horse gets respiratory disease, whether that's chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or anything like that. There's a strong correlation that identified with these thoroughbred foals that it's associated with how healthy the microbiome of the foal is at 1 month of age. There's other factors they're looking at, like osteoarthritis. Again, very applicable to all breeds of horses. So I think that this is a fascinating thing. What they learned from the thoroughbred study is that this period, the first month of the foal's life, is the most important for gut health. If you can keep the foal healthy for that first month, you've got a much better chance of having a healthy adult horse. So I think there's a lot of scope for companies like Plusvital and other supplement companies to look at that particular supporting the microbiome. The microbiome that the foal inherits is heavily influenced by the dam's microbiome. So we have to look at our mare's health and keeping them as healthy as possible in the lead up to foaling so that she's passing on the best possible future for her baby.
When I hear conversations like this, it can sometimes maybe be daunting, whether it's the feed we're giving our animals at home or supplements, or hearing studies like this, especially in terms of any of our inputs. It can be daunting knowing kind of what's right, and you don't want to, you're trying to do the right thing. You don't want to create a problem down the line that's going to hit us with their health, or when we try to sell it and their x-rays and causing problems. And it can be kind of hard to know where to turn. But another reoccurring theme that has come up this week, whether it's in terms of our industry professionals, our nutritionists, is our reluctance as breeders, riders, owners to actually reach out to people. Or even I've had several conversations with riders this week about, maybe they don't have a huge pile of connections in the sport and they have horses that they're looking to hopefully sell. But a show like this, or a company like Plusvital, there's so much access there that we don't really avail of. So whether it's a rider that is standing beside us watching a class that we'd love an opportunity to speak to, or whether we're a bit lost in terms of supplements or nutrition, it was one of the conversations we touched on earlier, was don't be afraid to reach out, because like you're perfectly happy from, as we were discussing before, you're perfectly happy for breeders to reach out to you, have a conversation, look for advice, whether they're buying something from Plusvital or not, or from somewhere else. Just it sounds like, and it's a shared thing amongst most professionals in the industry, you're very happy to give advice and to guide people in the right direction.
Yeah, no, definitely. I would like the nutritionists in these various feed companies and supplement companies to be seen as someone that you can turn to, the same as your veterinary surgeon or whoever it is that you go to for advice when you're kind of stumped. I know from working in the industry, in the feed industry for the last 8 or 9 years, that there's a huge offering out there, and I know how confusing that can be to try and reassure yourself that you're making the best decision for your horse. And I also know from being in that industry for the last 8 or 9 years, there are many nutritionists out there that are working for these companies. We get kind of a bad rep that we're just trying to sell something all the time, but my peers, I know, come from the same line of thought that I do, that we want to make the best decision for the horse, regardless of what feed you're feeding or what supplement you're feeding. We want to be there to help you, to help guide you to make the best decision for your horse.
Yeah. So an early message would be, whether it's a breeder, whether it's a rider, whether it's a top owner, a nutritionist, or anyone in the sector, that if you need a bit of help, or if you see someone who you've really wanted to talk to, it's just one more push. I don't know how many of them I've been giving, but it's one more push to just reach out and have the conversation. There's no downside.
No, there's nothing to lose, honestly.
Yeah. So thank you very much again, Rebecca, and a big thank you to Plusvital once again for your support.
My pleasure. Thank you.
At this point, I would like to welcome Dr. Niamh Lewis to the stage. If we could get a round of applause for Niamh Lewis. For some of the breeders that were in my knowledge transfer groups in the past, some of you will have been familiar with one or two previous things that myself and Niamh did together in terms of breeders talks, but I was first introduced to Niamh through her work in the Equine Reproduction Symposium that was run in 2019. And when you get to know Niamh, you very quickly see that she is someone very driven and a real perfectionist, and really has the kind of greater good at heart. There's nothing more than what we were discussing with Rebecca about reaching out, even if there's no sales pitch. Like, from the get-go, it's very clear that your intentions with what you do and your ambitions is always to help and to take the industry to a higher level. And Niamh is an equine reproduction specialist. She's also an assistant professor in UCD, University College Dublin, for any international visitors. But what I'd like to do to start off with is, you've had an interesting path from the point of graduating as a vet to becoming one of the leading experts that we have on equine reproduction in the country. Could you give us a brief overview on what that path looked like? Because I'm also conscious that we have some vets and some younger vets in the room with us as well.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me, and such flattery. I'll come here every day. So yeah, I graduated in 2008 from Edinburgh University. And to be honest, when I was at vet school my final year, I just wanted to travel. I wasn't very focused at the time. So I went to Africa for 8 months and traveled around, and then ran out of money and said, right, I better find a job. And very luckily for me, Lissadell Equine Hospital in Navan were offering an internship, which I applied for from Cape Town, and came straight home off the plane. My mum met me with some stuff, and I went straight to work as an equine intern. And absolutely loved it. and met kind of some people that were doing equine reproduction, and I found out that as an equine reproduction vet, you can travel some more. So you can do season hopping, between Australia and America and Kentucky and everywhere. So that's kind of what I wanted to do. I really fell in love with, we had a lot of pony breeders and we did a lot of frozen AI in the clinic, and I found it kind of really exciting being involved in, is she pregnant, is she not pregnant, to kind of, I suppose, was something I was really enthusiastic about. And then to be able to couple that with traveling, I thought, right, great, this is perfect for me, So I headed off to Australia for a stud season, and then I went back to Kentucky and did the full medicine fellowship in Haggards, which was amazing. We had kind of the most advanced equine reproductive medicine being performed, in these ICU babies, we called them, and some of them would be on ventilators and various drips, and, you're learning from the best in the world, and I think that's where I kind of realized I really wanted to kind of advance in my career. I just had so much respect for these people I was working from, and it was just so exciting to kind of be involved in that level of care. So then I, at that point, actually, had been kind of season hopping in opposite directions to my now husband. So life came into play, and we decided to move back to Ireland and try to live in the same country. And I did a stint in Donegal for 6 months, working as a first opinion equine vet, which I absolutely loved. But I knew in my heart, I wanted to kind of specialize and do something else. So a job got advertised to set up the first ICSI centre in the UK. And to be totally honest, I had to Wikipedia what ICSI was at the time. This was in 2012, but the advert was you were going to be working with equine specialists, you were going to be working with the human hospital in Liverpool, and with 2 universities, and also in a stud farm, Twemlow Stud, which was doing so much embryo transfer. And I just thought, gosh, what an opportunity to learn some more. It was a significant pay reduction, but I decided to kind of take that, Anyway, had the most wonderful 5 years, ended up setting up the first ICSI centre. We got an ICSI foal, we were on the BBC News. I ended up staying and doing a PhD. I did my residency there, so that's when I did my exams for the American College of Reproduction and also the European one. And then once that was all kind of done and dusted, my husband just finished his surgical residency, and we decided to start a family. Again, life got in the way, or actually made the way, I suppose. So we moved back here whenever I was pregnant with our first child. And at the time, I really knew I wanted to be in academia. I wanted to be involved in kind of advancing the field and researching kind of, why mares don't get pregnant, continuing with my work with ICSI. But at the time, there was no position to do that in Ireland. So I kind of went knocking on the door at the vet school and said, I'm here and I'm going to be living in Ireland. And anyway, fast forward, I guess, 4 years later, I finally got them to agree to give me a job. So now it's amazing. I've kind of, I suppose, got my dream job. I'm there starting a research group. We've got our ICSI lab up and running. We do commercial OPU, heavily involved in kind of continuous professional education within the country and abroad, get to kind of mentor vet students, meet other vets. So yeah, it's been quite squiggly, I think. But I think, I definitely got to where I wanted to be, I guess.
But it's also a great lesson in sometimes we can think, oh, this would be my dream job, but it doesn't exist, so I'm going to go and do something else. But, and I'm sure the path through your veterinary life, it's not that everything's going to be plain sailing. And from the time that I know you, you work your ass off as well. Like when you're determined to make something happen, you put a lot into it. Like none of this has happened by chance. But it's a great lesson in you've created the life and the job, and you used veterinary to travel, and you used it to put yourself in front of the leading people in their fields, and then you literally have created your dream job or your dream scenario in UCD at the moment. Sometimes when we're talking about ICSI and OPU, we throw it around like it's, I suppose that is perfectly understood by everyone, that it's mainstream conversation. And even though we see a lot of it on social media groups and platforms and debates and arguments and back and forth, but in its simplest terms, can you give us just a brief overview on ICSI OPU, what's the difference between OPU, ICSI, when does it become ICSI? Just for anyone, because there's a lot of people who it's not going to be relevant to their breeding programs, and maybe they've switched off because it's not. But in its simplest terms, or if you were discussing it with someone's over for dinner and they're not into horses, how do you explain?
Yeah,
what
so I
ICSI and
suppose
OPU?
you don't get one without the other. So you have to collect the eggs from the mare in order to inject them with a sperm cell to create an embryo. And it's very much exactly the same as what happens in IVF in humans with infertile couples. And we need to take the eggs out of the mare's ovaries, which we can do when they're standing up under sedation. And then we use those eggs, which we call oocytes, and then we bring them to the lab, we inject them with sperm, we hope that they create an embryo, and then when that embryo is made, we can then freeze it or transfer it, or freeze it and then transfer it later. And originally it was developed very much, again, like it was developed in humans for infertility, so it was where you couldn't get a genetic combination from that pair in any other fashion, whether it was because the uterus was diseased, the cervix was diseased, there was ovulation failure, that mare would not produce an embryo in any other means. So this is where this kind of exciting new technique came into play.
And again, just an observation that I have, I guess, appreciated is because, like, you're an expert in your field, and you're currently offering it as a service, but yet you probably talk as many people out of doing it as you do into doing it. And that goes back to what I was saying at the beginning about it's not your motives are never commercial. So from your perspective, either like professionally or personally, where do you see ICSI OPU fitting best in our industry?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question because I think it's a technology that has really taken off. I just was in a meeting the other day, and one clinic in America has done 18,000 in the last 3 years. Just one clinic. So this is in 2012 when I started. This was very much a niche thing that maybe a few hundred mares in the whole of Europe got done in a year. And I suppose the more that I learn, the more I think that less is actually more. So you're very right. I'd say at least half the people that call me to book in for ICSI, I talk them out of it, okay? So if there is a more natural way to produce that genetic combination, then, nature and evolution is pretty clever. So, why not leave them to it? So if they've got a very young mare and they might have heard of ICSI because it's fashionable or something like this, and actually they want to use a stallion that has semen in Ireland, I'm like, okay, well, why not, flush an embryo from her? Or actually, if they actually don't mind her being pregnant, why not let her be pregnant for the year? Do you really need more than one embryo? I kind of, I suppose, counsel them, and often at the end of it, they're like, oh, you're right, maybe I won't do ICSI. And I actually, I suppose, see that, don't get me wrong, I'm very privileged that obviously my job doesn't depend on the income from OPU and ICSI. That's obviously another huge thing. But yeah, I think that if there's another way of producing that genetic combination, I suppose always choose the more natural option for me.
And it is great that you're also counselling breeders, because I think a lot of it really need it. At the end of every breeding season, I think we should all have a session. Something that's come up in conversation recently, even during the week here, was about ICSI and where it plays a part in end of life, and where it's an option there. If obviously things happen, horses have accidents, and you don't really have time to do anything. But in a situation maybe where that the days are numbered for a particular reason, injury or illness, where does ICSI come in?
So I think that's where it comes into its own. Genetic salvage is a huge reason why it was developed in, both in the bovine industry and in the equine. So especially in the planned euthanasia situation, we can organize the blood tests in time, and then the ovaries would get sent to myself, and then we would extract the eggs from the ovaries when we have them after the mare has died. Obviously, she's under anesthesia, then she gets the ovaries removed, she doesn't feel any pain. She was going to get euthanized anyway. So, we've done 2 of those cases this year, and, this is not what happens to everyone, but both of them got 6 embryos from those ovaries, and obviously those are ovaries that would otherwise have been, buried with the mare. So certainly, and especially the other things with stallions, we can do the epididymal sperm extraction. So we flush the kind of, I suppose, testicular reserves from the testes, and then we can freeze that and then use it for ICSI as well. So yeah, definitely if there is a valuable animal that's about to be euthanized, or even if, has died suddenly, we have about 9 hours to play with. So, it really is an option there to salvage those genetics.
Do people ever use it as an option? Say, for instance, if you had a stallion that, for whatever reason, wasn't necessarily going to be, not one that's going to be put down, but say one that's about to be gelded, or one that has trouble collecting or things like that. Do you have any cases like that where somebody's like, the horse is fine, it's going to live many more years, but they still go that route?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's a bit like an insurance policy, he's a bit too hard to handle, or they're going to just do a routine gelding. And, it's kind of like, why not just put a little bit of sperm aside in case he ends up being, a champion, and then they always can come back to that frozen semen store and use it for AI or ICSI.
You'll know obviously much better than I will. That's why you're here. But in terms of ICSI, there's been various breeders that have reservations about younger mares, or mares that they plan on putting into the sport and doing ICSI. Will you talk to me a little bit about the concerns, or why that might be, or what you're seeing in terms of, say, you have a young filly, either doing it with the young fillies or doing it with young fillies that you're going to go into sport. Any reasons why they would be experiencing any issues, or would have those concerns?
So I think you're going to get a very different opinion from pretty much everyone you ask on this that does OPU. We do 3-year-olds and older, but in the continent in Europe, they'll often do 2-year-olds. And sometimes I've even heard of people doing yearlings, Now, in terms of, I suppose, there really is no long-term effect on so there's kind of, I suppose, in my opinion, there wouldn't be any reason not to do it before going into the sport. It's actually probably, not a bad consideration given how subfertile they can become when they're retired. And then obviously then it's much, much harder to get embryos from them. But it's not a benign procedure. It's a procedure. We have to put a needle through the vaginal wall into the ovary and out again several times. It is a very low risk procedure. It's about 1 in 1,000 major complications. The most current data we have is about 1 in 7,000 kind of fatal complications. So it's not benign in any way. We are lucky, I think, just that we haven't had any complications so far. But the more you do, unfortunately, that day may come to myself as well.
What are your thoughts? We've touched on it a little bit at a previous event that was run in Tullamore, but could you talk to me a little bit around your thoughts around the ethics conversation? I suppose ICSI and the ethics conversation around it really came to a head when Sweden, when the media kind of started covering the fact that Sweden had banned foals being registered that were created by using ICSI. What are your own thoughts or observations around that conversation, and where do you see things going?
So I think for me, the technology is amazing, but I also think that the procedure has to be done with the mare's welfare as a priority. So, every time I do it, that is my main priority. I make sure the mare is comfortable. If she's not comfortable, if she's not tolerating, we stop. And that might mean we don't aspirate all the eggs that are there, but the mare is the priority. Where I think the danger can be is, if we kind of follow the social media chat on it and potentially have the procedure banned, then actually those mares the procedure was made for that really benefits from will also lose out. And actually, at that event, I was very keen to, listening to the chatter on social media and different conversations, I thought, actually we really want objective data on what are people concerns. So now we've started a huge study, which Michael was very instrumental in starting, but, the first 90 responses were from breeders at your event. And I really wanted to know, what are the concerns with ICSI and OPU? Is it the mare welfare? Is it the gene pool? How do you feel your mares are after OPU? And the data we got was very, very mixed, you know. There was a lot of mixed opinions. Some people were really, really against it. Some people, you know, have used it very successfully in their breeding programs. But what was fascinating to me is that nearly everybody, when asked, you know, are there situations that you would use it in your mare, even the people that, you know, I would never use it and previously had been very negative, you know, that last question, they were like, oh, well, if she can't have a foal, then definitely, you know. And I think that's where the danger is with the blanket bans, is that then we won't have it available for those cases that really, you know, would benefit, and there would be no other way of getting a foal from, you know.
Do you see any merit in the conversation around restricting numbers of offspring registered to a particular mare in a year?
Well, I think it's definitely interesting, because I think that among breeders, you know, we're at about 70% are saying it needs regulated. And actually, we've done the same survey among vets that perform OPU. And the word on the street, I guess, is that vets are fine with it and everyone's just doing it, you know, all the time. But actually, whenever they were asked in an anonymous survey, 80% of vets also want it regulated, okay? Because they're kind of, you know, there's different pressures on both sides. You know, they feel pressured by the owner wanting to do it. Owners feel pressure by the industry potentially wanting to do it. So I think we do need some regulation. It's just, what does that look like? You know, is it the vets? Is it the breed agencies? Is it the stud books? Is it the veterinary regulators? Is it the government? And that's something, you know, we're all meeting in Ghent for the first kind of international OPU workshop in October, which I'm chairing. And that's where we're really going to have the nitty-gritty of this conversation. You know, how does regulation look like for our industry?
Yeah, because I guess what's difficult, especially in mainland Europe, it's probably easier to regulate or restrict it in, like, on an island. But especially with some of the Department of Agriculture changes about registering horses out, like Irish bred horses outside the country and that. But I think it's going to always be very challenging if you're in some of the strong breeding nations of Belgium or Holland, where you have so much choice in terms of registries and that sort of thing. Unless there's international cooperation, it's going to be very, very hard to get a handle on it.
Yeah, and I think the restriction and regulation are quite different in my mind as well. You know, it's kind of, how do we keep a handle on, you know, who's performing it, you know, how many mares, how many stallions. Interesting, just yesterday I had a conversation with someone who does it in quarter horses in America, and the way they're regulating it is that the stallion owners are only allowing a certain number of foals per mare per year. So if you go for ICSI with stallion A, you're only allowed to register, well, whatever it is, you know, 2, 3, 4 foals from that combination. So then you're not allowed to transfer the other embryos. So that's one way, I guess, that they're looking at it.
At the Tullamore, the breeders event that we had in Tullamore, it was predominantly breeders in the room, and I was asking them, one of the questions that I had was a discussion around breeding goals, but then for, say, some of our vets or other industry professionals, I wanted to know about areas or topics or things that they were particularly passionate about. But one of the things that we've touched on recently is, how do we enhance or strengthen or improve the interactions and relationships of vets and breeders?
Yeah.
Have you come up with any ideas?
Well, we're starting to. So my other kind of hat that I wear is Vice President of the Irish Equine Veterinary Association currently. And with that hat on, we're really trying to kind of, I suppose, bridge that gap. You know, we're all in the same team. Like, a vet's kind of primary aim, I guess, is to maintain mare welfare, and, you know, practicing the best evidence-based medicine means that welfare is optimized, hopefully creating, I suppose, a better athlete, in theory spending less money, because then you're not having to spend extra feeds or extra medications if you've got a healthy animal. So I suppose our first point of call for that is we're going to have a kind of a client symposium in November in the Lyrath, where we're going to invite clients, or I suppose just any horse breeders, horse owners, and kind of have it as a very evidence-based day of, you know, what do vets actually want to do for you? You know, what is the best evidence base? And, you know, we do that with horse owners and also with vets, you know, so we've got kind of two sides of it going.
What's the best way, or where will people find that information?
So we've yet to start advertising it, but it's going to be the 28th of November in the Lyrath on a Thursday afternoon. So, yeah, we're just kind of hoping to, it's a very new organization, and we kind of want to tell people, you know, what we stand for, you know, what vets, I suppose, can do, and a lot of that herd health kind of thing as well, you know, thinking about it from a yard solution or a group of horse solution rather than individual animals as well.
Great. Usually when I interview anybody or interview a breeder, I always end with a very similar theme on the last question. And around the breeders, so you have a bit of time to think about it, Melanie. Around the breeders, it's what advice would you offer to, say, a young breeder or someone starting off? But I'm conscious, as some of the people in the room, as well as being breeders or interested in breeding, they're also in the early days of their veterinary career. So what advice would you have to a young vet starting out in or out of the equine world?
What would be my advice? I think take opportunities as they come, probably. And also that you are literally your own walking advertisement. You know, every interaction you have, everybody you meet, if you're personable and you get on well with people, doors open everywhere, you know. I think that's the biggest thing. If you want to make an impression with everyone you meet, because you don't know where that interaction is going to lead, you know.
Thank you very much, Niamh. Could I have a round of applause for Dr. Niamh Lewis? My next guest speaker has travelled to us all the way from Belgium. Can you please welcome to the stage Melanie Hamerlinck of Van de Heffinck stud in Belgium. So again, it's a big commitment. You came especially for this event. So I'm very grateful that you accepted, that you said yes. Melanie is a breeder. She's a rider. Van de Heffinck have also stood and owned quite a number of very successful stallions as well. I think through horses like Vivant and Kafka, I think Van de Heffinck has become even more familiar to the Irish breeders, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. But for those breeders who maybe haven't met you before or haven't seen your breeding program, will you give me a little bit of an overview of the kind of numbers that you have in terms of broodmares and foals in a typical year, please?
Okay, thank you, first of all, for the invitation. It's nice to be here at such a big show with a lot of horse people and many areas with good horses. I'm not used to do such talk, so I will try to do my best to answer as good as possible. At home, we have each year around 20 foals. We do natural pregnancies, we do ICSI, and we do embryos. So it depending from the mare that we make a choice what stallion we will use. But that's a bit our quantity for each year, and then they stay a bit. Normally at 2 or 3 we select already a bit. So we have in total around 100 horses at home.
It's amazing you had the time to accept this offer and come here. With your selection process that you mentioned, could you talk me through a little bit about that? What does that selection process look like? What are the questions that you're asking at that stage with the young horses? What are the questions that you're asking, and like what are the things that you're looking to find or you're looking to remove at that point?
Yeah, we have our system that we always try to renew every year. Not every year, but we don't have plenty of old mares. We use most of the time young mares. We take out embryos of them if they are 2 or 3, or they can carry themselves a year of foal, and then they go into sport. And afterwards, they can be sold to a big rider or to do the international shows. Or yeah, that's a bit our thing with the mares and the selection. Yeah, for sure, we try to breed with the best as possible. We let them free jump a few times when they are young. They are X-rayed also. And then, yeah, the pedigree, the mothers, it's also a point that is important to take on, because they can become better and better if you know the family good, you know a bit the history of that dam line, and then you know a bit more.
When you're starting those assessments, the loose jumping for the first time, at what age is that, and how many times, for example, in that first year that you're assessing them, how many times would you assess them, and what sort of space between?
Yeah, when they are coming to in the winter, when they are coming to, then we let them jump just a pole on the ground, nothing big. See how smart they are, but for sure you can't take an exam if they if they didn't do the first class yet. So you have to take your time a bit, and then we do more in December, I think, November, December, when they come in. Then we do the first time, and then in February we take them separately for a few days. And then we do 2 or 3 times free jumping, but not high also. They are young, so... but you can see already most of the time good things or less things.
So when the assessment is, when the question that's been asked is small, it's obviously you're not trying to see how big they can jump, because I think that sometimes breeders, if there is one that maybe looks quite nice, the temptation is that people then will ask too much. But with the way you're doing it and with the small jumps, it's more about, is it how they use themselves and their mentality? And
yeah, for sure. If they have a good body use, and how easy they jump from the ground, light. I think it's today very important to have light sport horses, not too heavy, and okay, the scope. Yeah, a bigger horse will have maybe will show more scope, but at the end, if you see the 160 classes, the last 10% is maybe the mentality of the horse. That's really important to jump these heights.
when you're doing these assessments, do you write it down, or is it all in the head of yourself and your father?
Yeah, my father write it down a bit in a book, yeah.
And then do you follow it, because you've bred between 20 and 30 Grand Prix horses, you've bred several Olympic horses now, including one at the most recent Olympics with Fonchetti.
Yeah, Fonchetti was not bred in our stud.
Okay, but he is a Van de Heffinck, isn't he?
Yes, we bought him as a foal when he was one week old. That came because we had Kafka, it's the same family, and then we had also Libali. It was a good family, and we went to that breeder, and we bought Fonchetti as a foal at when he was a few days old. But that's also a bit we like to. We buy also some young mares with other blood from breeders, and then try to rent a mare also sometimes. So it's they get the name from the Heffinck, but it's not that the mothers are all in our place.
With your system and recording the system, do you find that the ones that looked good and got the good comments and the good scores at the younger ages is that mostly the ones who end up being the better horses, or do you find that there are a lot of surprises?
A lot of surprises, but we are always happy if a horse develops well, and for sure we can make a fault and haven't seen it, but that's not a big thing, because another one can be happy too, and that's I think also the strongness a bit of our company. We like to have happy clients, so then you have to sell also good horses, not only the rubbish, or how do you say?
Yeah, you have it. But what I'm wondering, I guess, is that in recent times, in recent years, the Van de Heffinck horses that have gone on and been successful at the higher levels, when you think back or look back on your notes, were most of them showing something special, or do you have it often when they've turned out to be a really good Grand Prix horse or one that goes to a high level, and when you look back at your notes, it's a real shock?
For the stallions, I think, my father for sure, he has a good eye, because, we had Clinton, Heartbreaker, Fuego, Vivant, then Kafka, Contact, Cooper. So I think, he had a good eye on the horse. And as a stallion, I think we did already good with the stallions to keep these stallions and to stand in our stud, and that the breeders can use them when they were young. So that's a good thing, I think. And from the mares, the mares, they can leave also, or if they have a few foals, we have a mare from that mare that we like, then for us, if it's a good client is coming, then she can be sold, because we have still some offspring of her, and that's a bit the system that we do.
What's incredible, even in the names of some of the stallions that you've mentioned, and when we think of what they've gone on to do in breeding, but Van de Heffinck stallions achieved incredible things at the Paris Olympics. Some of you may be aware of this already, but Great Britain obviously won team gold. And of the 3 horses that were on that team, 2 of the 3 were sired by Van de Heffinck stallions, which was an incredible achievement to have sired 2 of 3 gold medal winning horses. In terms of your selection around your stallions, especially the ones that are either born at your place or that grow up, is that selection much different or much stricter than when you're just selecting for the good sport horses for you to produce?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think as a stallion, you have to start with a really good horse, good type. It's also important, I think, as a stallion to start with a good type. Because then otherwise we geld them quite quick. If we don't think it can become a real stallion, then we geld them quite quick.
There are a number of breeders here who will have used the likes of Vivant and Kafka that I mentioned. What are your earliest memories of those horses, or like your memories of them as young horses at your stud?
Vivant, he is sold to Chris Chuck at age of 3, so he was quite young. But we went with him to the approval. He jumped there well, but he was a very sensitive horse. A lot of blood for that time in this period. The stallions were more a bit scopy and a bit more slowly, I think. And he was a bit a different kind of stallion, a bit more light and very bloody and sensitive. Kafka is he has just a super mentality. He is so nice. He does everything so good with different riders. He always tries to do his best as possible.
And was that the same from the beginning?
Yeah, Kafka always did well. The young horse classes, he did a lot of clear rounds. The approval show, he jumped good. He was always a sweet, good boy.
The fact that you're a rider and a breeder, how do you think that changes things? Like when you're a rider, how does that change you as a breeder, and how does it change the approach or the decisions in Van de Heffinck?
Indeed, I'm riding myself a bit for most of the time the young horses until age of 6 years old or 130 classes. I think the rideability is really important also because, for sure you don't breed all 160 horses, so they have to find another way to make somebody happy. So then it's always nicer to work with a smart horse who likes to do their job, who wants to do something, do for you. That's a bit, I think, important to use a stallion with. Yeah, you have to look also to your mare. It's a cross you have to make, and then try to find the best things together from both sides. Yeah, but the 160 horse, breeding a 160 horse, it's not so easy.
You've done it quite a few times, though.
Yeah, you have to have a bit luck also, for sure. But yeah, I think the mentality today is very important.
Do you find you will have had several of your horses, or the horses that you're riding, you might have had them for the family for a few generations. Do you find that mentality is something that's like really heritable? Do you find the horses with the good mentality, you maybe you've ridden their mother, or maybe you've ridden several siblings? Do you find that that's something that's being passed on, or is it a very individual thing?
Yeah, I think it's changed a bit in the breeding, I think. And indeed, if you ride them, yeah, then you know you better know how they are and what their mentality is. Yeah.
With the mares that you have in the sport, you were saying you have a mix of foals that are carried in their mothers and embryos. What sort of percentage is it in each year in terms of the ones that are carried by their mothers, or the ones that are embryos from maybe mares going into the sport?
I think only 30% mares that carry themselves, and the rest are from young mares, indeed, 5 or 6 years old. I ride them a bit. We take an embryo or 2 embryos out of them, because we also want to give our young stallions a bit chances to get a good mare, so they can prove themselves later that they also hopefully breed well. Yeah, we also use some older stallions with frozen semen. Yeah, that's a bit a mix.
And I suppose connecting it back to the conversation that we were having with Niamh, not just on ICSI but on embryo transfer. When you're doing embryo transfer or ICSI, and you can take it together or separately, but when you're doing that with mares that you're producing in the sport, in your own personal experience, do you see any difference or any effect, or do you have to give mares some extra time after they do it with your mares that are under saddle?
I think, yeah, ICSI is normally when we do this, then it's in the winter time normally. So yeah, I give them a few weeks off. But sometimes it's not necessary. You can see a bit. Normally, like Niamh said, it's depending from mare to mare, but sometimes the mare doesn't know that we did ICSI. And embryos, yeah, you can feel this if they become a bit more softer, then you give them a bit holiday, and you start up. You just do. For us, it's not a pressure. If it's a good young mare, she don't have to do the Belgium championships and all the things like this. I think we try to develop them a bit on their own time. If they have quality at the age of 7, it starts a bit the bigger sport, I think. And if they are already pressed when they are young, I think it's hard for them. It's better to do it a bit in an easy way. If their mentality is good, and if they are doing the shows easy, and you feel that they are a bit on a good level, then you don't have to force them, I think.
I have 2 questions for you before I let you go. So you, as I mentioned, you've bred quite a number of Grand Prix horses. You've had some incredible moments with your stallions, either the ones that you bought or you bred. You've had horses at the Olympics that you've either bred or bought. For you, what's the moment that stands out as your proudest moment as a breeder?
I think when Clinton became second in Aachen at the Grand Prix, it was nice to be there. Even we were not breeder of Clinton because we bought him when he was 1 year old. But yeah, he was a long time already in our place at that age. And then Kafka was also super nice when he won the stallion class in Mechelen, because it's just a big show in Belgium with all the breeders are there, and it's also nice. And then Fonsetti last year in December, who was second in the Grand Prix of Mechelen. It was also super nice for us, yeah.
And now I'm conscious that I have to keep to time, but the breeder inside me is screaming about asking you about Clinton and Heartbreaker and finding more. But we will have time when we have all the speakers back on stage. We will have time for some more questions. But I'm going to finish with a similar question to what I gave Niamh, and it's, what advice would you offer to a young breeder?
Yeah, I think you have to analyze your mare yourself very good and be a bit critical for yourself. I think that's a good thing to start with. And then a bit what's your goal is a bit. Yeah, okay, you can say not everybody wants to breed a 160 horse. So that's a bit also the goal that you have to think about. And yeah, the mare, I think the mare is really important, and to look good. Everything what you today you can find so many information of all the family, and just analyze very well and try to take this with you in your choice.
Okay, thank you very much, Melanie, and a round of applause for Melanie Hamerlinck. So, after we have had our final guest speaker with me, there'll be plenty of time for questions, so you can be thinking those up. I would now like to welcome to the stage Stephan Conter, the founder and owner of the Stephex group. Can we have a round of applause for Stephan Conter? So with the microphone, if you just keep it close to your chin.
Thank you for the invitation. Hello, everybody.
You're an incredibly busy man, so I appreciate you taking the time to come and participate in this for the benefit of us Irish breeders. You are involved in so many things, it would nearly make me stress just thinking about all the things that you have to do. You have obviously a huge trading business, sports stable, breeding program, horse trucks. Like, there's not much in the horse business that you haven't developed a business in. I know when you started out in the horse business, it was maybe dealing a bit. I think it was quite different than how things look now. But when you started out and you decided that college wasn't for you, you wanted to go at the horse business, had you a clear goal at that moment?
Not exactly. I was young. I didn't want to continue to go to university, like all the people that have the microbe of the horses, that we want to be with the horses, we want to do competition. And my parents pushed me a lot to study. That's a dream from each parent. And yeah, I was a little bit cheating on that, doing more my horses than going study. And I learned a lot. I started in normal dealing horses. I was really a guy that was dealing quite a lot. I was moving the most horses in Belgium, yet when I was 23, 24 years old, more than 1,000 horses a year. I started first, not nice to say, sorry for everybody, with meat horses, how you say that? And after 6 months, I said, this is nothing for me. That was not my feeling. And then I went in dealing horses, really cheap horses, 1,500 euro, 2,000 euro. But I was doing enormous. My competitors were a little bit the Irish at that time for Italy, because our market of all was Italy. A lot for Ireland, but they were coming to buy the better horses in Ireland and the cheap dealing horses in Belgium. And I was a bit jealous of that. I say I have to change something. and because you had the big money and I had to play with the small money. I say I'm going to have to work much too hard. I say I'm going to start also with the good horses. Luckily, Ireland sold a lot of their good mares and good breeding, and you, sorry for all of you, you became a little bit weak in the breeding in the sport. And I said expressively that it's been a mistake in Ireland about 30 years ago, that you had a mentality to sell everything. And I think you all sold, lucky for us, Belgium, you sold a lot of your good mares, your good mothers, your good breeding, good sport horses, just to take the money. But it was a big problem at the end, because you are a little bit, sorry for all of you, but you have been the last 30 years a little bit behind countries like Belgium in your breeding program, because you sold all the good mothers. And that's something to remember in life. You have to keep a stock of good mothers. It's all what your future, your sport, your strongness in this business, to keep your good breedings. Now you have to recreate it, I think, in Ireland, and a lot of Irish people come to buy the good breedings again in Belgium. But yeah, that was important. And that's my story. And then I met, when I was young, Lou de Philippaerts. Then we got partner for 2-3 years together. Both of us had no money. He was full of talent riding, and I was trying to do my best in business. Then I grew in better and better horse. To make it short, then I met some really great riders like Eric Lamaze. I was partner with him for 12 years in the business, and we grew a lot in this business of the better shows. And then I decided at that time to have my own riders, and then I took a guy like Daniel Deuser, then Lorenzo Di Luca, and all the group that we have, and now we are here with still a lot of headaches, but a fun sport. It's not each year the same, but okay, we had really good years. We won a lot. Like we got really famous with the time of Wickstedt and so, when I was part of Wickstedt, and that we won the Olympics. And then you get that taste of sport, yeah, and you cannot lose it. Nobody of us, all your good Irish rider, nobody wants to be the last one. We all want to win and to have the best horses. That's a bit my story.
You're, like I mentioned, you're dealing in a lot of different areas in the business. But just in terms of horse numbers, between dealing in the sport yards in Brussels and with your breeding program, approximately what sort of horse numbers are you managing at the moment under the Stephex group?
Sport horses, we had always the last 10 years around 200, 250 sport horses. And then breeding, in our breeding program, I think we have also something like 250, 300 horses at Arad La Pomme in France, and with Catenay in Belgium. I'm partner there. I bought the stud farm La Pomme, I think 10 years ago, at 50%. I'm still partner with Gert Bartzoen there. And now I jumped in a partnership with the stud farm Catenay in Belgium. And because we have access to a lot of good mares, and I believe in this, breeding with good horses gets us in top sport.
You mentioned Hickstead, and you've had a lot of good horses, but you've had some really great horses, some really famous horses that have gone on and done incredible things. Like Hickstead, you've had Cornet d'Amour, you've had Tobago, you had Halifax, who was #1 in the world, I think, one year, who was actually out of a Van de Heffinck mother, if I'm not mistaken. You're obviously, every day, every week, you're trying, buying, selling some really, really good young horses. But with those really, really special ones over the last few years, looking back, is it clear that they shared similar things? even though all the horses were different to look at, but did they share many qualities?
Yeah, it's what we talked about with a lot of riders the day of today. The horses changed a lot the last 15 years. And I think we get more success with intelligent horses. Does that mean that we have to breed with horses yet that can think about? It's not anymore to fix a situation in the ring last minute. No, the horses are intelligent. We need to take them careful today, first of all, to do the big sport, yeah, to trust their jockey and to go through fire. They're all different type. Eckstedt is a short, small horse, a strange way how to trot and all the things. Physically, I don't think it's the most important thing. You put Killer Queen near Eckstedt. She's 2 ribs too long. She's a long mare, a little bit made with a deep back. Then you see Tobago. It looks more like an Heffinger. You have that also, a fjord pony here in Ireland. For me, the type is not so important. It's what they want to do there. If they want to learn to fight and to be careful to do the sport.
And you're buying horses of all ages.
Yeah.
But do you have a preferred one? And in terms of that mentality and that attitude, either when you're buying or when you're breeding, like how quickly do you think you can see that or identify it?
That's something really difficult to explain because it's something with the year and the experience that you learn when you look through, I call that looking through an horse. Yeah, you have to feel it, and I try to learn that to my daughters now, to do the same thing that I do, and it's really for me complicated to explain that, but you have to be confident in yourself. And because I bought so many horses all these years, for sure I have a little bit more experience than the young guys that are starting in the show to look at them. But what should I explain? The clearance are important today. At the end, how they jump, they all jump a different way. But to want to repeat the clearance, it's important. And today, we cannot cheat on horse. We cannot anymore, like we all did long time ago, preparing an horse and all those things. I think the horses that we breed today are too intelligent for that. They remember. And if you cheat on them for that, you don't have the same horse in the ring. They will not fight for you. And you see a big difference today. And how to tell, or to look through an horse, they need to be careful, first of all. Want to learn each day, then it makes it easier, an intelligent horse. But they're also different. I'm going to give you an example. You also lately, for sure, Kendra Brinkhoff riding an horse called Tabasco, owned by John Magner. And I told, when I sold them the horse as a 7-year-old, he's autistic. Yeah, you have to interpret him. Yeah? It's a strange thing. But if you handle him in a good way, yeah, you can get a superstar. And he showed himself that I think is one of the best 9 years old in the world this year.
Yeah, statistically he actually was for a while.
Yeah, it is. It is the way how to interpret him. And it comes from a small breeder that in fact Toxandria has the lately 3-4 really good horses and all different mothers. I think you have all to keep believing in it and try on good mares, but take only your chance on good horses. Don't go and choose an horse that's unsound, not because of a tendon injury or a soft tissue injury, because that happens to all the sport horses. That's not a defect. But if you have one really that's totally born and sound and that you don't get them over a class from 130 because it's not sound, you say, okay, we're going to make quickly money, do some foals of it, you lose your time. You put too much time in it, too much effort, too much money, and you will not get a good one out of it. just breed with good horses, with performance, with wanting to jump, and to have scope enough to, they don't have all to jump 160, because the best mother are often like, we had mares like Usha, and so not enough scope, but the last will to jump over there. That's important. Breed with mares that wants to do it, that fight for it.
And that's why I'm glad that you brought up Usha, because I really wanted to discuss Usha, where for a lot of breeders that are following modern show jumping breeding, she has really become part of a dynasty, and she's become probably one of the top 3 or 4 lines in Europe, or created that. You bought her as a young horse, as a very promising young horse, and she didn't go all the way. She didn't go to the top maybe as a sport horse, but what she's done as a broodmare was exceptional. And why do you think that is?
It was really a strange mare. She was born unlucky. If there was something wrong with that could happen with her, it happened for sure. She could be so stupid. The blood was streaming too quickly to her brain, and sometimes she forgot totally to think herself. I bought her as a 7-year-old. I still remember the price and everything. And
it wasn't small. I don't
it
need you
was
to
money,
say it, but
it was money, but
she was
not
expensive.
crazy like today. But at that time, if I spent that money, it means that it was a good horse. She has the jump, a reactivity, a carefulness, unbelievable. But she could be so stupid. You could go to the best show and you say, we are ready for it. And she was just biting in her chain in the truck and break all her jaw. Each day there was something with her. She could be so... And you have some of her foals that are like that. But she bred the quality. Really a quality, unbelievable. Fast off the floor, chin blood. It's always good in a dam. The mother side chin gives you always blood, and they go through fire. And she was that. Sometimes she forgot to think, but she was really a fighter. We never got far away in sport with her because she did only accident, at least 2-3 accidents a year. But she was amazing mare, and she produced. Yeah, she's a name. For 10 years, she's been one of the best broodmare in the world. And then we send her once, and that's a mistake. I'm going to tell the story. My partner, Gert Batsoen, where I gave the mare Usha, and his wife was totally against it, that I was going to send her to Italy to do ICSI. She said to me, Stephan, this mare, if you send her there, she will never come back. And she was right. The way how you handled her, she was so particular, and we lost her there with the ICSI.
And it sounds like an awful lot of even the problems that you mentioned are that it's down to necessarily her sensitivity. Maybe more so than, not necessarily that it's a lack of intelligence, but maybe the sensitivity of her causing the problems.
Sensitivity, and okay, good chin are horses that are extremely high in blood, and sometimes when you don't handle good or you don't pay enough attention with them, they don't think the last minute. They had too much blood.
Because even going back to the Olympics, I think from the team final of gold, silver, and bronze, there were at least 2 were directly out of Chin mothers. I think.
Yeah, they're always, everybody bred a lot with their daughters and daughters that keep breeding. No, it was not much, but you have always, at the show, in the big shows, out of Usha van der Rosacker, you have always some of the good ones. But, okay, honestly, we should not block only on one breeding, because I think if I have to do it again, okay, I didn't make the mare so famous. She made herself so famous. But to breed always with the same thing, you don't have to forget one. And now I took a big decision with my team. Then when we breed 4 or 5 years with the mares, then we should let the chance to the other one, sell them, and new blood. Okay, I have easy to talk because we have a lot of mare coming in the sport from us that we part exchange or that we do an arrangement when we sell them, when the career is finished, that we want them back because we want to breed with that blood. I'm speaking a little bit easy because I'm in an easier position to buy back some really good mares or to put all mares or sport mares back in the breeding. But I think to change your blood sometimes, not drastically, but to bring new blood, it's really important. Don't get stuck always in your same system or same bloodline. Go and choose something else to give more opportunity. Because what's clear when you look the class tomorrow and you look the Olympic, that's not all coming of the same breeding. And often we say, shit, who was that stallion? And we don't know him really well. And it's not mathematics.
It's true, because I looked through all the pedigrees of the 94 horses, I think, on the definite entries list. And I think it was something like 71, maybe it was a lot of, like, really high amount of different stallions. And it's, I think there were only maybe 2 breeders had more than one. It was like something like 71 different stallions. It was, there was quite a mix.
Better know, because like what Paul did, Paul Schockemel, was a lot of Jacques Blue on all time. But okay, Jacques Blue are how they are. They're good jumpers, but it's not because you breed with Jacques Blue that you sure make a Grand Prix horse. I think you have to let the chance to, like the bloodline of Wickstedt was ridiculous. There's not one good horse that came out of that bloodline, and he was exceptional. And maybe what we can say, he didn't breed so many good horses. Yeah, a few crazy ones, like the one
Came
of
in Jolly Jumper, yeah.
Voilà, Simon de Lestas, and so, yeah, okay, but it's not because the stallion is not famous that you don't breed a really good horse.
Each year, well, each week, you probably buy a lot of horses or look at a lot of horses for your riders in the sports stable. And actually, what's incredible is the number of riders that you can have in one business competing at such a high level is incredible, and that's something quite special.
That's because, okay, that's a little bit a mental sickness. I learned to be only real competitive with my stable 12 years ago. I lost a rider, and I say, oh no, I'm going to play with the big guys and going for sport, or I'm staying the big dealers. But that's two big different things. I took the risk to take Daniel Deuser to ride for me. For me, it was a big investment, a big risk, and a challenge coming from a big stable from where he was coming, from Jan Tops. I say, oh, I'm going to look ridiculous and give him only 2-star horses, and I'm never going to get there, or I have to do an effort. And then when you start to take that taste of winning the big classes, you don't want to give that away, and you keep fighting, and then you have new riders like at that time, Eiken Sato, Japanese, was also in top 10 in the world, and I brought him to the top 10 in the world. Lorenzo Di Luca, I took him, he was number 250 in the world. Nobody knew him. And I sent him 1 year here to Dublin. And I think he won 5 classes here in Dublin, the Dublin Horse Show, the Grand Prix and all the classes. And he became number 2 in the world. And when you taste to that, you don't want to give that up. Then you have to keep fighting to stay there. No, I'm not in a good position, but I will come back. But that's for sure not easy. You don't have to try to do that because you don't sleep in the night. We have 11, 12 horses, 12 riders. I have my kids and everybody there. I have to see that I have 5-star horses for everybody. It's not simple. We are here at this show. We have, I don't know, we have 13, 14 horses from us here.
Yeah, across 3 riders. Yeah.
Yeah, 4 riders here. I have 4 riders here. Petronal Anderson, Emily Conter, my daughter, Daniel Deuser, and Kendra Brinkhoff. Yeah.
When you're looking at horses, we've talked about pedigrees and traits and bloodlines, but when you're going to try or you see a horse you want to buy, when do you care about or look at the pedigree?
have all the same feeling that we like to look to the stallion that are in the fashion, yeah, the big names. But like I was at the championship in Belgium and in Lier and in Gèvres, at the end, I think we have to concentrate to look on the horse. And then after, what I do always, I want to know the breeding, what mother, what it's coming from. And then you see, you start to know a little bit the faults on a horse. Like a Canaan, if you choose a Canaan, you try to have enough blood. Elasticity behind. When you breed with a Canaan, when I say to Gert, he wants to use Canaan, I say, okay, you use a little bit an athletic mare that really have a back end that is loose and everything, because Canaan gonna freeze a little bit the last stride and squeeze his bum, or you say that, sorry for my words, and you need a horse that's a little bit loose there and a mare with blood. Then I'm thinking about blood. Like we speak Van der Heffinck, a great breeding, but at the time that one of the best stallion in the world, Clinton, but we had to pay always attention that the Clinton could jump water. And so we judge a little bit all the stallions and how we breed. For sure, when we look to an horse or a Carthago, so we say, oh shit, are they jumping water? Yeah. There we look at the breeding. For the rest, that it's an unknown breeding, and that's a really good jumper, we're not going to leave him on site. We're going to buy him.
I think I heard you say before with the stallions that you have, or the stallions that you prefer to use, that you want the stallions that are already really proven in the sport. With stallions that you own yourself, do you use your own young stallions, or do you wait until they're proven at a higher level?
We use them on some mare, and because today we have access to ICSI and to embryos, then we don't waste the situation. We say, okay, we try with that young stallion, but I prefer to breed really with a proof stallion. I think it's important, and to prove in the ring, like now we have a fantastic stallion in Belgium, the stallion of Jill Thomas, yeah?
Hermitage, yeah.
Hermitage is fantastic, and okay, for sure, then now we see him jumping. I go in that way. I'm not a knower enough about breeding to go look through an horse like her father is, Hubert Hamerlinck, or like Joris de Brabander. They are real breeders, and they have it in their blood, the bloodlines and everything. They look at it in another way, and they know it much better. That's more their business. Two different business. I'm more a sports stable, and okay, sports stable dealer has nothing to make with this, but sports stable is a little bit different.
Was the stallion part of your business something that you went into intentionally, or was it as a result of having stallions?
Results of having stallions, for sure, and then like we all dream to make the big money with selling the semen, and then I say it's interesting. And in fact, I was not good enough in that, because that's also a business. Being owner of stallion, they see it totally another way. They see about the breeding, they take care of their breeder and all these things. And we are looking, we prefer to say, we don't take semen this week because we have a big competition. Or we don't take like Tobago. Yeah, I don't want to let them breed because I prefer to win a Grand Prix. Yeah. Okay, no, when he's going to retire one of these days or years, I don't know. Yeah, then we're going to a little bit push a little bit more for the breeding. But you think one way in life that you can do everything, but you cannot do everything good. You have to choose a little bit. And we choose for the sport, and I don't think that I'm good enough for the stallions.
For someone with that opinion, you're doing a lot of different things very well.
Yeah, I've a lot of, I don't know if I do that really well, or I have a lot of really good people around me to help me in that. Okay, for sure, Stephex growth, it's a big company now. I didn't know that I was going to become an industrial. Yeah, but you know, the value that we create in the horses, is only ourselves, our name, and we cannot resell it to somebody. It has no value like you own an industry and that you build a brand of cars or whatever. You produce something and you produce value for your family for later. And then I decided 20 years ago to start in the industry. Yeah, and now it became big, and okay, there's a lot of things around the industry for us. But my passion, and I said it again, if I find a really good CEO to run the group, I want to go back full in my horses. It's the only thing where I'm happy. To go and see them jumping, to buy horses, that's the nicest thing there is. And to go and try to win Grand Prix. That's important, and that we're going to try to do tomorrow. I hope my German guys are awake.
I wish you well, but I hope it's second or third now. We need an Irish win after after not winning the Nations Cup on Friday.
Yeah, we're not going to let them any chance.
So I have one final question, at which point then I'll bring the other speakers on. I have so many more things I'd like to ask you about, but I really told to improve my time management after last year. So I finished with asking each of our guest speakers a little bit of advice for either the younger breeder or the younger vet. Will you give us a little piece of the advice that you would offer to, I'm going to go with 3 for you, I'm going to get greedy. The young person starting out wanting to be a dealer, the rider wanting to make their career, because you've helped make the careers of quite a lot, and then the young breeder starting out.
The first one is quite difficult because our system, a dealer is not the dealer of before. Here in Ireland, I remember in my young time, you had a lot of really big dealers. And we were going through them. Once the Italians and all Europe were coming to buy in Ireland before, they were going to those big names. I remember Manicinelli coming here, all these guys, and they were going to maybe the 10 big dealers, and those big dealers knew all the horses in the country and did the deals. Now this system, by us also in Belgium, after Ireland, they all came to Belgium, Holland, and we were also 10 big dealers, the Hendricks, the Schockermuller, you know all these names, Tops, François Maty. And now it's finished with the internet. It's something, the business changed totally. And it's difficult to advise somebody because now everybody follow internet, can get access to everybody without passing through a dealer that has a huge experience. And for me, the dealer of tomorrow, or it's the guy that has a few people that he trains in-house and be able to sell horses to these people. Or the second thing, invest in good young horse with good riders, produce them well, and then they will sell. The moment that the producing from the horses is done well, and you have a good pick for an horse, or good eyes for an horse, then it's going to take you between 18 to 36 months to produce an horse to a certain level. It's long, but then you're going to be able to sell them with profit. And that's what worked with us the last 10 years. We keep the better horses a middle of between 18 and 24 months, and then we sell them and producing. Second question was?
For a young rider that was at the early stage of their career.
Humble, working hard, keep believing in himself. Don't be scared to ride many horses, yeah? And to take as much as possible experience, to take all the best from everybody. Not to fix yourself. Anyway, the way how you ride, it's your system. To be better, you cannot change 100% because you are not natural anymore in the ring then. To go at many places and ask advice from all the best, and to keep believing in yourself, and not to want to jump straight away to the top level. I think the construction of the young horses brings you really strong roots to learn to know better an horse and to respect them. And I think many show and working really hard to get there.
And then have you any advice for the young breeder that wants to make a life in this?
I think that's a job that somebody can, first of all, to be a breeder, for all the job that you do on your horses, you have to have a passion that it's incredible, because nobody counts these hours and they're all working really hard. I think, or I said in the beginning, start with good mares. Don't lose your time. Don't start to invent something to breed with an horse that has not the capability to be a good horse, because you will lose your time and your money. Do better, less, but breed with good mares. That gives you a chance. And then the way to educate your horses, do it also in a good way. Once they're bred and you have to educate them, give them the time, and don't want to do it too quickly. If you want to be competitive yet as a 4-year-old and win the classes, you're going to shorten your career of your horses. Let them grow and let them get maturity. Many horses get only to maturity when they are 8 years old. It takes time. And all breeders, still when you are busy with your horses, still at the age of 5, 6-year-old and maybe 7-year-old, your horses grow in his body, get bigger, get stronger, and change. If you're going to try to do the competitivity and to have the best 4-year-old that flies a meter over the jumps, you shorten really his life. And that's, sorry for owners of stallion, but that's what happened a lot with the young stallion. They have to prove that they are spectacular and that they are wow when they are 4 years old. They have to be the best of the weekend, of the show, of this, of that, to sell their semen. And it's why we see many of these horses not getting really competitive in sport, because they have to do their career before the real career. And it's quickly finished. That's my idea. I don't know everything, but that's my feeling. Before
I get all the other speakers back on stage, can I have a round of applause for Stephan Conter? So, if you three guys could also join us, I have to get one more chair here. You can stay where you are. What I was saying at the break was, when we do these talks, we obviously get the people that I'm curious to learn from or to hear more from, and it's very hard. You can get completely lost in the stories or in the information, and you want to keep going. But I'm conscious that I also want to give you guys a chance to ask some questions as well. There was one more thing that I wanted to ask Stephan. Was he's in an interesting situation in that, as well as having multiple riders that you employ that have succeeded at a high level, you're also in a special situation that you have 2 daughters who are developing their own careers in the sport and jumping very successfully. Stephan's daughter, Emily, jumped the Nations Cup and had a super performance on Friday. And while you're very motivated to be at the top and have the riders that are winning and being very competitive, how does it feel having your daughters coming through in the sport? And I believe they also are quite interested in being involved in the business as well. That buys you an extra minute to think of your question or work up the courage for some of the speakers.
For me, for sure, it's proudness. Okay, the last year, Zoe did really well. My oldest daughter, now it's Emily. We found a few horses for her. And for sure, I'm really proud. She wants to follow me what I did, and that's really hard for her. Zoe is going to do the part of another business buyers in the company. They all do something. Zoe is going to do, we have a bank of leasing, and so she's more a shyer girl, and she prefers to do the number. But Emily, the daughter that's riding here, she wants to do the dealer like me, the horsewoman like me. And for sure, that's what we all dream. I never knew that it was going to happen. It's a First Nations Cup in 5-star, selected by our coach. For me, it's the nicest thing. If she can do some results there, I push them on that. I try to not put too much pressure. Yeah, that's not easy. But no, it's nice. And she's riding here a young mare for it's a Bamako mare. And what's fun, and that's important for all of you. Yeah, it's maybe don't let the vet judge too much about your horses. Stay, all of you, with a strong horsemanship, because at the end, we have many vets that are failing horses for little faults. And this mare, when I bought her as a 7-year-old, the guy came to me. He said, "You asked it a few times on my mare, but she has a little issue about vetting." I say, "What's the issue?" And for me, okay, for sure, it's an issue to bring a discussion in a cell. But at the end, it's what they perform and how sound they stay. And then it's not because your horse is born with a chip or with a navicular bone that's less nice, that your horse is for the dustbin. That's totally wrong. It's never been a jury when you go in the ring and you ride the 160 that ask you the x-rays of your horse. And I think if we would have asked the x-rays from the horses that were jumping at the Olympic 2 weeks ago, I think all these vets would have a big job with all their comments. Because or your horse become lame, they all go lame one day. That's a pity. That's a question of time. But one day, they all go lame. But the lameness are coming from 90% from the soft tissues and not from problems, bone problems, navicular, chips, and all these things that they invented, those kissing spines. And each year they find something new. Yeah. Keep believing in your horse. When the results are there, they are buyers. And when they perform, that they have a less good x-ray or whatever, who cares about it? We like to jump clear in the ring. That's important.
If we ever have a horse good enough for your program and there's a question mark on the vetting, I'm not joking.
All the dealers say to me that I was crazy when I bought Ikstedt. Yeah. It was clinically, now I may say it, Ikstedt is not there anymore, we may talk about it. Clinically on the circle, the left hind flexion was totally positive. Yeah. Discussion, a little bit arthrose in the fadlock, in the joint and all the thing. And I bought it. If I had done like all the other dealers to say, oh, he failed the vet, I don't take him, then I never had a medal, an Olympic medal. And he won a lot of classes. And he made me successful. And I say, from that day, I didn't listen so much to all our vets. And I'm really sorry for the vets, but so really sorry. But they are not the guys that making the sport. Horsemanship, remember that. And that you have a lot in Ireland. We have all the respect for a lot of the trainers and the riders in Ireland, that you are born with horsemanship and the feeling of the horses and situation to solve situation about soundness. And that's something that you have to keep learning at the next generation. That's the most important thing in our sport. Having the good feeling. You don't need to have studied 7 years to be a vet to do this. It's or to solve situation. And I'm really sorry for you, not a critic. It's maybe because I was not intelligent enough to learn for 7 years at school.
Thank you very much, Michael. Congratulations on your chairmanship of the meeting. I think it was excellent, and I think the questions were really interesting and informative. Well done for that. As a veterinarian, I'd have to say to Stephan that when a veterinary practitioner, a veterinarian, examines a horse, the final sentence in the certificate that we sign here in Ireland, and I think the same is true in Britain, is that, quote, on the balance of probabilities, the condition listed above are or are not likely to influence the horse's performance as a show jumper or an eventer or a racehorse or whatever. It's a matter of opinion in terms of the probabilities. So I think that needs to be borne in mind. But some of the points that you make are valid. I had 3 things I wanted to touch on. First of all, what is your view on the importance or the relevance of the thoroughbred in the breeding of modern sport horses? And just to give you a statistic, last year there were 5.6% of the foals in the Irish sport horse stud book by thoroughbred stallions. 40 years ago, the figure was 65%. 40 years ago, 0.3% of the foals were by foreign breed stallions. This year, it's 40, or last year, it's 45%. The second question is in relation to the riders. Do you have an opinion as to why Ireland, if I may say so, and modestly for the country at large, has been so successful in producing good international riders? In the current standings, we have 14 riders in the top 100 out of a population on the island of Ireland of 7 million people. And finally, I would just like to ask about the dilemma involved if you haven't a large number of mares, but you do everything that everybody has described here this evening in terms of trying the horse over a little pole at the relevant young age, and so on and so forth, and proceeding with the horse. And then maybe it's 7 years of age before you decide he's not really good enough, and you have to sell him off at maybe 10 or 15,000 euro, and the horse at this stage has cost you 50, 60,000 euro to produce. It's an economic dilemma and question. Thank you.
I answer straight away to your second question first about the riders. I just say to everybody, what counts in our business, in the horse business, is horsemanship. And I repeat that because it's so important, and it's why you have so good riders. Because the education here in Ireland, first of all, you have one of the oldest education of sport, show jumping and all, and feeling in horses from all the country. You were the best country to buy horses from for the performance 40, 50 years ago. And this education, I think that all these owners and horsemen gave that back to the younger generation. Many went flight out of the country, but they brought their experience there, and that's why they are so competitive, and they have a good feeling on horses, and they will be always dangerous jockey. The dangerous jockey, I mean competitive, yeah, and that's a proudness for your country, and you should continue this way because you are busy in a good way. You're so many good riders, yeah, and so competitive. Don't change nothing on that. That's important. About what you do with these horses when you ride them and train them for sale, raise them until they're 7 years old, yeah. What do you want me to answer on that? You can be lucky and thinking that your 4-year-old is only normal and came up as a superstar as a 7-year-old because you change rider or you change system or it got maturity, and you can cash 2 million euro, and you can be lucky that you were dreaming about your 4-year-old that was machine, yeah, and it's like that. That's the business, and nobody's going to be able to change that. And we're going to have all to accept, because all the horses that we keep in the stable, all of us, if we're sure that they were taking 20 or 30% value each year, yeah, then there would be million people doing this business, because we are living in a dream world compared to the other ones. That's the first of all. Yeah, we don't work in the office from 9 to 5, and we are the whole day busy with horses, in competition with friends and having fun. Then we have to take the risk. We're not all gonna die rich, but at least happy. And your first question? Yeah, that's a mistake that I think before my generation many people did to bring a lot of blood in it. Yeah, for sure, thoroughbred are not show jumper, and they are less strong. And I think that's what Belgium did really well, and we forgot to talk about that. I'm proud of it that we are from Belgium, and we are the strongest country in the world for the show jumper from far away, right? We all right about that. We have all the best horses in the world. And lucky through that, they became important breeders and stallion owners. And I became an important dealer through that because we were in the right country. Yeah. And why I think our Belgian breeders, okay, had easier access at that time, 50 years ago, to go and choose the best horses, the best mare, the fanatic, like you have a lot of fanatic breeders also, were going to buy the best German horse to cross with a French horse that could not trot and had an half soundness. And then they produced an horse with a good power, yeah, a good mental and sport. They did a good crossing. And that's the Belgian breeding. Holland went a little bit more, I think, my idea, Holland went more the last 50 years in the model of the horse. They bred always the most beautiful horse, but future, zero. There was only 3% of the horse that could jump a 140 class. They were all beautiful, looking great to ride, but no performance. For that, all Belgium types are not the most sexy types in model, but I think the crossing, and not to involve too much thoroughbred, to cross the French blood and the German blood, I think we became the strongest breeders in the world. That's my idea. And that's the mistake that you did in Ireland. It's why you lost to be the first country in the world to breed the best show jumper. You crossed too much with thoroughbreds at that time, and that was a mistake. But we're not going to learn everything to the Irish, because otherwise they're going to be much better than us in 10 years.
Another question for Stephan. And Michael, you might help me out a little bit if I don't phrase it right. Something I'm just curious about at home at the moment with the last couple of years with our breeding program is, you touched on it earlier, just the sensitivity of the horses. And then you've referenced horsemanship then a number of times as well. But from what you've learned over the years, what approach do you like your people to take with sensitive horses or handling sensitive young horses?
Yeah, that's also horsemanship. That's I think that from the moment that you raise them, I think you have to have sensibility for horses and to treat them in a good way, and to start to train them to get used to the human and to respect the human, and to learn them to lunge them at a young age yet, and to jump a little pool. They don't have to start to jump a puissance when they're 3 years old and to jump fences from 160, because we all did that. But then we do mistakes. We create the stress, and we make them sometimes anxious on it. Yeah, let them grow in it, but play a lot with them, and that's what fascinates me. Many people think, and like for sure, I have all the respect of Paul Schockermöller, but I don't think, and it's what he taught maybe, you cannot breed all the horses the same way in an industry, in a battery, like you do chickens, yeah? To say, I have the good bloodline, that plus that is going to make a superstar. For me, what counts on a horse, why a horse became a superstar one day, it's all the emotions that he had all his life with his breeder, with his rider, with his groom. What happened? He ran out of his field, he jumped out of his field, or he got scared for this or for that. That play always in the life of an horse. And we can all dream with our big money, we're going to buy the 1,000 best mare in the world, and we're going to breed all the same, and we're going to have the best horses. No, it's the care that you take for your horse as young horse. What happened with him, or you train him, or you learn to jump his first pole, or you get him out of the field. I think this makes the character of an horse. And it's like our kids, you cannot all raise them the same way. It's all the emotional moments that happen in their life that will make them a superstar, I think. And that's, we are here all today in this arena, in the big sport, thanks to the breeder. All the job that they did, all these years, or they've been busy with their horses. They passed much more hours with all these young horses than we have passed. We try to make it quickly to get at a good level. But I think the breeders has the most important job in our industry.
I have a question for Niamh, and it's on a topic that I didn't get to earlier, and it links in with the microbiome comment, but also the environment comment. And this is probably, it's a topic that we could spend the whole night discussing, but in kind of in simple terms, what are your thoughts around epigenetics and the effect that it will have on our breeding program, or the likes of the microbiome study, and what, like, could you explain it a little bit in terms of epigenetics, and what's within our control maybe to influence to give us the better chance of breeding these superstars?
That's a very big question for 9 o'clock at night. So yeah, I think that it's hugely important, and I think everything that you've mentioned and the microbiome all feeds into it. I suppose the concept of epigenetics is that, you know, the horse or a person is born with the genes that they're born with, but whether and which of those genes are expressed in order to, you know, have the character or jump the fence or, you know, get laminitis or have equine metabolic syndrome is all to do with how those genes interact with the environment. And that environment, actually, we're learning now that it actually starts even pre-conception. And in humans, they talk about the first 100 days as being pretty much, you know, determining nearly the rest of your life, which is quite scary. But even, you know, when the sperm is in the testicle, when the egg is in the ovary, when that embryo is conceived, pregnancy in the, you know, the placental effects in the uterus, everything is going to have an effect on the athlete and the future horse. And certainly those experiences are going to shape the phenotype or what that horse or what that human is going to be like. So I think that, I suppose you can overthink it and talk about it for hours, but it comes back to that kind of, what did nature intend? And I think that you can't really go wrong by adhering to as natural a diet as possible, as natural an environment as possible for the horse, you know, as calm an environment. Yeah, kind of, I suppose, what would have happened in the wild without us being involved, and the foal will probably turn out okay, you know, within reason.
Pat Magner here. Thank you very much for giving us a very insightful night. A question to the two breeders. Since Plusvital is in the business of specific health issues, for the want of a better word, and you're one company doing this, the question then is to the two breeders, how do you manage your, because you have such a large quantity of horses, do you have dietitians involved in your business, or do you get somebody to come in and review specific animals? So how's your feeding? Both, it's to both, right? So I'm just wondering, because you have such a large quantity of animals, how is your feed, dietitians, nutrients, how is that all managed or decided upon, for the want of a better word?
I think this is a good question. That's something where we are not strong enough now today, also for the sport, not only for the breeding. We should specialize ourselves with people that knows a little bit more about dietitian for the horses to help us what to feed them, because we feed them all with the same foot. And we see that we get a lot of ulcers and stress on the horses. And that's something that I'm asking a lot to my vet for us, for the competition, that we need more specialists about what to feed to our horses. Each horse is different, and we should really invest a lot in that. I think it's going to help a lot, and the breeding and the sport and everything. That's my idea.
Yes. My sister indeed works for Cavalor, so indeed she does a good job on her company also, I think. But for the young horses, I think the most important is to have the good fields, to give them in time the ivermectin, and not give them enough that they can move enough. That's, I think, the most important thing for young horses, and for the sports career, it's more Stephan.
Thank you all for an excellent evening so far. Just while we're on the topic, I know to take up on Stephan's point that you say, you know, maybe you feed them all much the same, even though they're quite different. So we'd have some experience working in this field to see that across different breeds and different types of horses, the different type of nutrition can have different effects. So some might eat more or less, or some are more prone to ulcers, laminitis, etc. So just a question for Niamh on this is, do you see the same effect when it comes to reproductive procedure, that a certain breed of a mare is more, you know, sensitive to a certain medication or treatment or responsive across a different breed of sport horse? You know, say, obviously thoroughbreds don't do this, but, you know, an example being a Belgian sport horse or an Irish sport horse or a certain type of different particular breed.
So we definitely see breed differences, and whether it's specifically in sensitivity or not, I'm not sure. But one of the things we're researching at the minute, for an example, is that Irish sport horses kept in Ireland seem to have a lot less follicles. So we have around 10 is our average, whereas in Central Europe and in Belgium and in Italy, the average is 20. So that obviously plays a lot on results, because we can't possibly get the same results because we start with half the starting material. And then even whenever Avantea in Italy publish the results, it's very obvious that there are breed differences. Now they, as far as I know, haven't broken it down within sport horse types, but definitely quarter horses, Arabians, warm bloods will have very different results with the procedure. And then other than that, very much the individual mare, you know, her calmness in the stocks, her kind of attitude to life will definitely affect the amount of sedation she needs, how she recovers from the procedure, and we kind of try to tailor it for that. But certainly, yeah, nearly all mares are definitely different.
So I have a question for Rebecca first, and then I have a question for Stephan as well. When I was doing my homework, am I right in saying you've worked in 4 different continents at this point? So you've worked in different roles. You've worked in 4 different continents, which is quite a lot. Are the things that you've seen in the industries in other countries that you really feel that we could be doing, that are being done better elsewhere, that we could be doing here, or easy wins or small improvements that we could be making from your past roles and working life around the world?
That's a good question. What I have seen from my experience in all these different places is it's always fascinating to me. You know, we're all trying to achieve the same thing. We're all trying to breed and train and own winners. You know, everybody is looking for success. But there are many different ways of doing that. There's no right or there's no wrong. Certainly, I don't know if there's any wins. The biggest challenge is probably what Niamh alluded to there, is climate. You know, the difference in the climates around the world, that people are trying to deal with that. I mean, a horse is a horse wherever they are in the world, really. It's where you drop them down and what you're trying to get out of them. So I don't know that there's any real easy wins. wherever you go in the world, there's always an Irishman somewhere in amongst these horses as well. So there's a lot of the horsemanship, I'd say, from Ireland that's been transported. I mean, a lot of my experience certainly is thoroughbred. That's what I've been in most of these places, dealing with mostly thoroughbreds. So, you know, from a horsemanship point of view and from an easy win, I don't think there is, because it depends where you are and what you're dealing with, really. I don't know. I think a lot of ideas from other parts of the world have drifted across, especially nowadays in the last 10 years, 20 years. The world has got an awful lot smaller, you know, with the internet and everything. It's much easier to share ideas and new scientific revelations and things like that. So we're much more on the ball. So yeah, I think
We mentioned at the start about encouraging people to reach out to whatever professionals in the industry you need help with, and to not be afraid to reach out. But from the people who are reaching out and want help and want guidance, what are the most common themes or phone calls that you're getting at the moment?
One of the most common issues that I see with performance horses across the world, be they thoroughbred or sport horse, is not enough fiber in the diet. And that's something I think is starting to change now. People are starting to get it about gut health and the fact that the horse in the wild is a hindgut fermenter. This is the type of diet that their digestive system is designed to actually digest. So we are seeing a swing back more towards lower starch, higher fiber diets. But certainly, you know, our performance horse nowadays is very far removed from that horse grazing across the prairies in the wild, because we're expecting them to perform and to do so much more. You see the horses that have been here in Dublin this week, and, you know, the guys that are jumping every day, and they're jumping massive, massive tracks. And, you know, that requires a careful energy balance to get enough energy to be able to do that, but without blowing their heads off, that they're not going to be able to concentrate. So I think, yeah, fine-tuning, and they are all individuals. There is no one-size-fits-all. This is something definitely that I've learned. You know, it doesn't matter if they're all the same breeding. They're not necessarily all the same temperament, or their metabolism isn't the same across the board. So you do have to be able to make some tweaks. And sorry to be pushing again, but this is where, like, the supplement companies come, where you can maybe work with one feed in a yard, but you can adjust some things in the diet for specific horses, you know, so that you're getting the best tune out of them. Yeah,
So Stephan, you mentioned about, obviously none of this would be possible. We wouldn't be here at a show like this without the breeder and the effort that the breeders put in. You are looking from the outside in, you're always looking to make improvements, make tweaks. Your team is, it's full steam ahead for the Stephex Masters coming up soon, and you're always looking to innovate. As an organizer of 5-star shows, are you currently doing anything to reward or support the breeder in the show? And if not, are there things that you think that you could be doing?
The first important thing that I did for the breeder, because I need them all, and I need to have the first chance to buy their good horses. For me, it's important. We invited all the breeders. I don't know if you're not going to be able to do that here in Dublin, but the show is totally for free by us, by Stephex, because I have to return something to the breeder. And I don't think that I have to pay the breeder to come and see the best horses in the world performing at 100 kilometers or 200 kilometers from their house, to pay an whole week to come and see. And the first thing I wanted to do, to attract everybody and to say, come on, it's for free. Entry are for free, parking is for free, everything is for free. Come and see the big sport. And I think that's the best return that we can give to the breeders, because anyway, they follow each day, each weekend, the performance of all these stars. And to let them alone to be near the riders and seeing those super machine jumping, that motivates them a lot, I think.
I've been given the sign that we're out of time, but I want one more question to Melanie. You've had so many great stallions in and out of your stud farm, homebreds, ones that you did in collaboration with other people like Niamh, and you've had a lot of good horses come and go. As breeders, who's the young stallion that's the one to watch, or the one that's not being given enough attention? The one that the breeders here should be really, really thinking about or studying in your stallion collection?
I think now you're asking about the young quality stallion that I believe now. I think that was your question. I think we have an interesting 3 years old stallion out of the family of Fonsetti and Kafka on the mother's side, and the father is Scandro. We have him together with Niels Brunsels, and I think that's an upcoming stallion. But okay, he is still young, but I think that's really the nicest maybe today in our catalog. Senecio. Senecio is that.
So as you can see, I could be here all night listening to you guys, and I really appreciate that all of you give your time and give your knowledge and give your experiences. We really need events like this and conversations like this, and breeders and people in our industry here need access and need opportunities to meet you guys as well. So I really appreciate you giving your time. So thank you very much. If we can have one round of applause for all our speakers.